Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Rule of Two podcast, a podcast with a K dedicated to all things Star Wars. I'm your host, Aaron Richland, and with me, as always, is my trusty co-host, Sean Ritter. How's it going?
What's up, man? What's up? I am getting very excited. Very exciting day for both of us and Star Wars fans everywhere. Today is May 25th, the day that Solo, a Star Wars story, officially launches in theaters. Super pumped.
Very pumped. It's kind of funny because I've been waiting. I feel like I've been waiting for this day for so long.
Yeah.
But it's only been 6 months since the last Star Wars movie. It's pretty awesome.
It's really great. I feel like I keep going back to this Marvel comparison. We're getting so many Star Wars movies all the time now. We really don't have to wait like we used to when we were growing up. It's also funny too because we started this whole Solo Star Wars story journey by not really being that excited about the movie. We've already seen so much of Han Solo do something new, right? It was, I think, the general complaint from most Star Wars fans, but I can't tell you how pumped I am about the movie coming out today, especially after everything that's been in the news, which we're going to go through here today. All of the TV spots, which I think is a good place to start. We've seen a couple of new ones, right?
Exactly. Well, in our previous episode, I think episode 1 actually, that was dedicated to the Solo movie, and we talked about some of the production issues that they had, some of the issues with the actor Alden Ehrenreich and his portrayal and acting skills, whether or not that's going to be an issue. There
was a lot of doubt around whether or not he was going to be able to.
So I thought we'd take the time. This is one of the bigger Star Wars days of the year, having a new Solo or new Star Wars movie coming out. So I figured we'd take the time to talk about some of the new things that came out since our last episode, and let's start with some of the trailers.
I had previously been unaware of, or something that wasn't made very clear, at least for me. I don't know about you, but we always knew this was going to be a Solo origin story, right? What I always wondered was, okay, are they also going to show how Han and Chewie met? And one of the more recent spots that I've seen, you see Han and Chewie on this bridge. It's cold, it's snowy, and Han, they're both sitting there, and he turns over to Chewie and he says, "So what's your name?" And that was kind of the moment where I was like, oh, they didn't know each other. And that's another, again, I'm getting more and more excited about this movie, and that was definitely something that stood out to me. I'm like, oh, cool. We get to see how they met, where, supposedly, and again, I think this might have been coming from a lot of expanded universe stuff, so probably not canon, but Chewie owes Han a life debt. I don't remember them ever bringing that up in the movies.
If that's canon or not, but
I don't either, but that was always kind of our assumption. Like, okay, well, what did Han do to save Chewie for him to vow this sort of life debt to him? So that's going to be really cool seeing their essentially their first meeting. Yeah,
on that point, I think, if I remember correctly, and I could be wrong about this, but I think the old Legends, what was in the expanded universe, was something along the lines of the Empire went to Kashyyyk, kidnapped a bunch of Wookiees, essentially enslaved them to help build the Death Star, and Han helped save Chewie from that. I think that was kind of the general origin of how they met, and that's why there was that life debt. So knowing who Han is, I think we know that he definitely was in the Empire, like he was a recruit to the Empire. So maybe they are kind of borrowing from that. Maybe that's some of the reason why that's how they met. Who knows? We'll find out tonight.
We do see Chewie embracing another Wookiee. So it could, again, all speculation. Maybe Han had something to do with saving this Wookiee that meant something to Chewie. Who knows? Point being, we're going to get to see how they met, how their friendship grew, more of their backstory, which is very cool.
Yeah, I think, so one of the other trailers, I think one of my favorite ones that I saw was this one called Ride. And we'll link to most of the trailers that we watched leading up to this in this show notes. So this trailer called Ride, it started out with, I think, Han saying how he was going to be the best pilot in the galaxy. And Lando says, "I like this kid." And then it shoots up the Millennium Falcon, right?
Yeah, you see it like in orbit of some planet.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. One thing I noticed with that is that the Millennium Falcon looked almost identical to what we see in A New Hope, which is kind of strange because we one of the things we talked about in the last episode was how the Millennium Falcon had that little extra piece on it.
Yeah, there's no the front end didn't have that pronged effect. It was a solid piece. There was no gap in between,
and it looked more rugged. It looked more like Han's Falcon, not so much as Lando's Falcon.
That center piece was missing. It's got that gap. It looks a little more run down, not as brand spanking shiny new. So the Millennium Falcon clearly goes through some shit.
And I think there was another TV spot called Team where it went through some of the introduction between Han and Lando, which is something I haven't seen before, and it was pretty interesting. So,
yeah. There, again, that's another relationship that we don't really know that much about how they met, how they became friends, what happened to them that kind of shoved the wedge between what used to be their friendship, because we don't see Lando until episode 5, and some stuff has clearly gone on in their past. Assuming we're probably going to see the event that took place that eventually took the Millennium Falcon from Lando's ownership and put it into Han's hands. All very cool stuff. Another one thing that I was very excited about in one of the TV spots that we saw, I think the spot was called Lieutenant. Kira is gonna be a badass.
I think so.
We see her like a very pseudo fight sequence between her and Paul Bettany's character, Dryden Voss. Another thing about Kira that I found very interesting, I didn't previously know. I was watching an interview with Emilia Clarke, and she was basically saying that her character and Han had known each other since they were kids, known each other for a really long time. Something happened where they grew apart, and then the plot of the movie starts, and they're brought back together, presumably for this job that this big time gangster is.
Yeah, you hear Woody Harrelson's character, Beckett, I believe is his name. He pretty much says in every one of the trailers about the big shot gangsters putting together a crew, right? And in this lieutenant TV spot, Dryden Voss calls Kira his top lieutenant. So there's something going on there where they definitely have a history together, and that is what's bringing them together, I presume.
I would presume the same thing, and it's also made very clear to us that this big time gangster is Dryden Voss.
Yeah.
Which something again, this might be just a silly Star Wars fandom hope, but Dryden Voss, at least in the earlier trailers, we see this flash of red, some sort of red weapon. It's clear that it's in some of these newer TV spots that it's not a light whip. It doesn't look like it anyway, I originally thought. But the last name Voss is not an unfamiliar name to the Star Wars universe.
That's true.
I'm speaking, of course, of Quinlan Voss.
Who is canon. He is in Clone Wars.
Who is officially canon. And Quinlan Voss was a member of the Jedi Order, but he wasn't always. He does have some darkness in his history. So I don't know that there's going to be any connection there, but
I mean, look,
something that kind of stuck out in my mind, which would be really sweet.
That'd be great. Look, there's a lot of names you can pick from in the Star Wars universe.
Of course.
Picking Voss, while could be coincidental, may not be.
Especially now that he is officially canon. Quinlan Voss has always been a fan favorite among the Star Wars community. So
I think another theme that we see throughout a lot of these TV spots is, and it's something we see in A New Hope and throughout the original trilogy, about how the Millennium Falcon is the fastest ship in the galaxy, right? So in one of the TV spots, I can't remember which one it was, but Dryden Voss is talking about needing a fast ship, also a brilliant pilot is what he says. And I think we know obviously who the answer to both, who the answer to both of those are going to be. Fast ship, Millennium Falcon, and brilliant pilot, Han Solo.
Obviously. Speaking of the Millennium Falcon, I couldn't help but laugh hysterically a little bit during one of the spots. I think it was Ride, where we see the hollow chess, and Chewie and Woody Harrelson's character Beckett are playing, and Chewie gets mad, obviously because he's losing or not doing well.
Clearly sucks at chess. Hollow chess.
And of course, we know Wookiees are known for being poor sports and getting mad when they get loose. And he slams his arm down and tries to swipe away the chessboards, and Beckett makes fun of him and says something along the lines of, you can't do that. They're holograms, you idiot. It was just, again, another very clear instance of them taking advantage of all of the humor that we've heard about from various sources. They're going to be present in this movie.
That is another theme that I think we've seen throughout almost all of the TV spots and trailers is the humor, right? And I just hope that they didn't use all of them in the trailers, right? Like you see that a lot with like scary movies where they show all the scary scenes in the trailer, or sometimes with a comedy, most of the funny parts are in the trailer. So I really hope they didn't. I hope they left some surprises for us.
I hope they saved the best ones for the actual show. Absolutely.
So that goes into some of the TV spots that were available. Those were more just trailers and kind of some teases as to what we can expect. There were also some full clips that they released on their YouTube channel. We'll link to those in the show notes below, but I personally stayed away from those. I did not really want to watch any of those because while the trailers, yes, they can spoil some things, the clips
it's usually
are full things, right?
Right. The trailers are small details.
Scene. Yeah.
These are actual like 30-second, minute and 30-second clips of the actual film. And I haven't seen all of them, but I did watch one of them, and it was pretty great.
Yeah, I think it was the three that I saw were available to watch. The one that you watched, which was, what was that about again?
So it's the scene where Han is there with Beckett, and I believe he's also there with Kira and Lando, and the Millennium Falcon's off in the distance, and they're meeting a character called Enfys Nest, I believe is how you pronounce her name. And you see her in the trailer. She's covered in armor and has like a spear.
The new badass looking character.
Yeah, presumably they're there to, or she is there to collect on some debt. And
classic Solo.
It's yeah, exactly. And it's their first meeting and the interaction between them. And it was great. It's very, again, classic Han Solo. What he does, what he says, what happens is all fantastically brilliant. So the movie comes out tonight for all of us less fortunate tunnel dwellers.
Yes.
For the elite members of society, the movie actually premiered a week ago. Right?
Or just people that live in LA.
Or you know,
or London, I guess also.
Or that.
I didn't see that one.
Or that. But yeah, that premiered last
about
week.
About a week ago?
Week and a half ago, something like that.
Yeah.
And there were some pretty cool things going on the red carpet.
There was a lot of cool things. So we're going to break down some of this. There were some interviews with the cast and crew. They showed off some pretty cool things. So we'll jump right in with so what they did, which you had to look this up. This is really cool. We'll obviously link the entire stream in the show notes. But they actually built looks semi full-size replica of the Millennium Falcon. I don't think you go into it, but it was full size, and they put it in the middle of Hollywood Boulevard in front of the Chinese theater there, and it looked really awesome.
Why would you take the time to build essentially a full-size Millennium Falcon if the people who spent all this money to be on the red carpet to go to the premiere can't like walk through it?
I don't
know.
Why
would you not do that? That should be like part of your entrance to the red carpet. Mm-hmm. Is you get there, you walk through the Millennium Falcon to get to the. I don't. What? It seems like a missed opportunity.
And another thing that we see with pretty much every Star Wars movie that's come out so far since Disney took over is Nissan and their marketing scheme and how they have commercials around their Nissan Rogue, right? We see that with the latest movie with the scene between Chewbacca and L3.
Right.
Really great.
Right.
They also had a customized Nissan Rogue that looked like a Millennium Falcon, right? So
on the red carpet.
On the red carpet. It was awesome. I don't think they're going to sell this one. It would be awesome
really
if they
wish
did.
that they would.
And we'll link to this in the show notes as well. But this is really awesome. So what they did was they took the Nissan Rogue and worked with the designers at Lucasfilm and essentially made a customized version of the Nissan Rogue that looks like the Millennium Falcon. So they had a cockpit over the windshield that was, the circular with the little panes.
Right.
The back of it had the little circle things that they have, and then also the little blue, energy thing that, shoots out all the time. I don't know what it's called.
Right. The blue energy thrusters that propels the Millennium Falcon was what? The headlight, the taillights, presumably?
No, all the way across the back.
All the way across the back.
It was really awesome. And, it actually customized the inside like the Millennium Falcon cockpit.
Oh, that is awesome.
Lights and all sorts of things, which, they don't do that on a normal car.
No. Presumably not going to be for sale to the
unfortunately
public. Really sad, because I would try my hardest to fork up the money to buy that bad boy.
You are in the market for a new car, so it would have been perfect timing.
It would have been perfect timing, although probably a little out of my price range, I would imagine. So you watched more, you kept up with more of the premiere than I did. I do know that there were some Twitter polling going on during the premiere where they would ask questions and people would respond with the answers.
Yeah, so I thought it'd be kind of interesting to kind of go over some of their Twitter polls. So what they did is they had one of the hosts ask a question and to the Twitter sphere, I guess, and people would submit their answers in video form or not, and then they would show the results. And they were interesting questions, all having to do with Solo. So I figured we'd go through a couple of these and just, maybe I'll see what you think, and we'll go from there.
I was gonna say, let's read off the questions, the options, and
discuss it a bit.
Yeah, discuss it a bit, and I'll try to guess which one I think was what came out on top, or which one I would have picked that came out on top.
Yeah. So the first question was, who would be your Millennium Falcon co-pilot? And the options were Han, Chewie, Lando, or Kira.
I mean, I think there's really only one clear. Well, let me ask you this: is Kira butt-ass naked?
That that was left out of the question.
I'm going to presume no, then.
Unfortunately.
So, I mean, I think there's really only one option. I mean, it's got to be Chewie.
See, that... Okay, so that actually won, yes. However, I don't know about you. So this is asking who you would want as your co-pilot.
Right.
If
it was
the
me...
best co-pilot.
No. If it was me piloting the Millennium Falcon, who would I want sitting next to me?
Would you not want the best pilot in the galaxy next to you? Like, I would have voted Han Solo personally. I mean, but then there could be like clashing heads, and that would just be awkward,
See, I think that's the thing, because Chewie's more reserved a little bit. I guess you could. I mean, a little more
taking orders,
level-headed than Han. And so, does this mean that I'm not the best pilot in the galaxy?
See, that's a good question. I don't know.
Either way, I mean, I'd have to.
Maybe you won it from Han in a Sabacc game.
Now, is it Sabacc?
Oh, you know what? That might be from KOTOR. Is it Sabacc? Actually,
KOTOR. It's
Pazaak.
Pazaak and
I think
KOTOR. It is Sabacc that they play. Pazaak is KOTOR.
Yes.
Quick little trivia that I don't know if you knew, but I was listening to a podcast from our good friends Rogue Squadron podcast, and they had Drew Karpyshyn on recently, and I was listening to it, and I learned that he actually invented Pazaak for the game. He came up with the rules. He came up with everything, which I thought was really cool.
That is very cool. Actually, I listened to that as well, and I think he said something along the lines of they wanted a Star Wars version of Blackjack, and that's what he came up with.
Right. Yeah. Just a little cool thing
And
that I
way
remember.
better than blackjack too. Let's be honest.
Way better. Way better than anyway. Okay. Cool.
So that was the first question. And Chewie did win that one. So the next question was, which new alien are you most excited to see? And there's quite a few new aliens, some of which I have no idea who the hell they are.
I'm sure I'm in the same boat.
So the first one was Rio. That is Jon Favreau.
It's Jon Favreau. Yeah, I knew that one. Yeah.
Then there is Therm Scissor Punch. Apparently he
Therm
is...
Scissor Punch.
Apparently he's one of the aliens sitting at the gambling
like
table.
Scissors, clip, snip, snip, and then punch like fist.
Yep. It's together.
Okay.
Combined in one word, Scissor Punch.
All right. Interesting.
And then the next one was Moloch. I have no idea who he is or she.
No reference to where they're at in the trailer, who they're gonna nothing.
I could not find. I mean, I guess they're probably in the trailer somewhere, but I don't really remember.
Interesting. Okay.
Then Argus, Six Eyes, Panax. I don't know. So again, the options are Rio, Therm Scissor Punch, Moloch, and Argus, Six Eyes, Panax.
Interesting. Not knowing, I mean, I would say not knowing anything about any of them, I'd have to go with Therm Scissor Punch just because that name sounds pretty cool.
It is a dope name.
Like, my name's Therm Scissor Punch. Like, who's gonna fuck with somebody named Therm Scissor Punch?
Not many people. I mean,
nobody.
He's sitting at the gambling table with a bunch of smugglers, so he's probably a badass. Yeah. So to me, this one was kind of a rigged question, right? Because no one knows who any of them are except for maybe Rio, because that person at least has a speaking role in the movie or in the trailers.
And it's being voiced by Jon Favreau.
So,
but a lot of people probably don't even know like what the character. I mean, I only recently found out that his name was Rio, but yeah, a rigged question for sure.
And Rio won,
of course.
The next question was, which scoundrel would be the first to join your crew? So you're putting together a crew.
So it'd be the first one that I picked
which one would be
to
the
be
first
part of
one
my
that
crew.
That you would want to join your crew.
That I would want to join. Okay.
The options were Beckett, which is Woody Harrelson's character. Val, which I believe is Thandie Newton's character. Rio, Jon Favreau's. Or L337, the droid for Lando.
Interesting. I feel like just out of efficiency, I'd probably go with L3. You got to go with the droid, right? They're assumably going to be the most efficient. They're a machine.
They need to eat more food for you.
They don't need exactly. They're probably more well versed in mechanics in case something breaks. I mean, the list goes on and on, but I'd have to go with the droid. You got to go with the droid first.
So L3 did win. Now I would have picked L3 as well. So, but kind of so knowing what I know now after watching some of the premiere and the interviews, I think Val would also probably be a good one, which we'll touch on that in a little bit. But I did read the tie-in novel Last Shot, which had a little bit of L3 in it, and L3 seems like a badass. So I would have definitely picked her for hands down. And
The Last Shot is the Han Lando movie that takes place over a period of time. Yeah. Sorry, did I say movie? Yeah, novel. That takes place over a period of time. It's both before and after this, and
we'll
during
touch on that in a bit. But
yeah, L3 really the clear choice to me.
Oh yeah, I think the droid just swept that one. So
yeah.
All right, and the final question, and probably the toughest one out of all of them, was
here we go.
Who's the galaxy's most fashionable gambler? Is it A, Lando Calrissian, B, Lando Calrissian, or C, Lando Calrissian, or D, Lando? It's a tough one.
This is a question that they actually
asked. I'm not joking.
And those were the options that's hilarious.
Yes.
I'm gonna have to go with B, Lando Calrissian.
Yes.
Oh my gosh! You wouldn't
B won
know.
by 35%. Not by 35%.
Gosh.
Won 35% of the vote.
Wow.
So, nice guess.
Yeah, awesome. I'm on it today. I don't know what to tell you. That's funny. I mean, I don't know who else it would be other than Lando.
Nobody else.
Probably the purpose of the question, obviously.
You've seen those capes.
Oh, I've seen the capes. I want to be in those capes.
Yeah, and that's actually something that was one of the clips that they showed during the premiere. was, I think we may have talked about it before. I don't know. But it was Donald Glover. He was giving a tour of the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah.
And he went through the entire interior.
thing.
It was really cool to see, because that's another thing that they mentioned in this. Pablo Hidalgo is, I don't know his exact role, but he's a creative person at Lucasfilm, I believe. Very into a lot of, I think he writes a lot of those like companion books to the movies.
Yeah.
He
The ones
also,
with like all the diagrams of all the ships and like what the names of all the aliens are and all.
He also gave a pseudo tour of the Millennium Falcon, and in that he said that this is the first time that they had a set of the Millennium Falcon that was complete, where you walk in through the up ramp, or, through the on ramp, all the way through the interior, all the way to the cockpit, and like and that sort of thing. Whereas previously,
it's just pieces
they were
and
broken
parts.
up to different sets, right?
Really?
Yeah. So I thought that was pretty cool.
That is really awesome, actually, and how fortunate for the cast and crew to be there and actually get to go on the full Millennium Falcon. That is really sweet. Harrison Ford didn't even get to do that. He was the original Han Solo. Wow, that's like kind of mind blowing a little bit.
I hope they at least let him on set. I mean, he kind of deserves that, right?
I would hope that he would have come to set at least once or twice. I mean, come on.
Speaking of Harrison Ford, did you see I think it was Entertainment Weekly, Entertainment Tonight, ET, something like that? Anyway,
I did not.
They were interviewing Alden Ehrenreich and asking him about what Harrison Ford had told him in terms of advice for playing Han Solo, right? And I've heard that question be asked multiple times throughout some of the interviews, and he always says that Harrison Ford told him to say that he gave him really good advice and that he wasn't allowed to say what it was. So he said that.
Interesting.
But as he was giving that answer, Ron Howard was walking behind him, accompanied by Harrison Ford. And
I didn't see the video, but I heard about that they like surprised him or whatever. Like when he's giving this,
and it was cool because the reaction that Alden Ehrenreich had was clear that he respected Harrison Ford and was shocked to see him, and it was pretty cool. You guys got to check that out. We'll link that in show notes as well.
I'm gonna check it out for sure.
But anyway, so speaking of the cast and crew, what kind of took up most of the premiere was the hosts interviewing various members of the cast and crew. They talked to pretty much every major character, from the actor that is playing Chewie.
But so wait, that means we're not going to get any Peter Mayhew this time around?
I don't actually know if he's credited in this. So this is the actor who has played Chewie in the other two movies as well. I know Peter Mayhew did.
He did
some of them,
right? It was like more of the strenuous activities that Peter can't do.
Yeah, and he kind of touched on that in terms of how he's approaching it. He doesn't want. So they asked him if he was recognized, right? Like walking down the street, like Peter Mayhew is a pretty recognizable person. People know who Peter Mayhew
at this point, yeah.
So he says that he doesn't get that recognition, but that he doesn't really want it, and not because like he doesn't want the notoriety, but because he wants you to think that it's still Peter
Mayhew. And very interesting and very noble of him to want to maintain that true essence of Chewbacca. That's pretty cool.
So they also interviewed some other people. They interviewed Paul Bettany, who plays Dryden Voss, Matthew Wood, who is the sound engineer at Lucasfilm, who's been involved in many Star Wars things, dating back to, I think, The Phantom Menace, I think was his first gig.
The voice of one of my favorite characters in Star Wars, General Grievous.
That's right. Yeah, I forgot about that. He was interviewed. That was an interesting thing. They interviewed pretty much everybody, and I kind of want to touch on a few of them that were fun. We'll link in the show notes to each individual piece and where they're at in the premiere. But I think probably my favorite, which may be a surprise to you, Sean, actually, was John Powell, who is the composer of the score for this movie, right?
Really?
Yes. So this is a guy who, if you look at his IMDb page, he has over 70 credits on his IMDb page.
It's no small feat.
So he's no small guy, no small composer. He has credited with things such as How to Train Your Dragon. I think he did Kung Fu Panda, and probably one of my favorites of his is the Bourne trilogy. Well, not just the trilogy, but all the Bourne movies.
Oh, very sweet.
Yeah, that's a very distinct, in my opinion, score. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah,
it.
I mean, I can hear the Bourne score in my head right now, so that's sweet.
Yeah, so he actually said that when he found out that he got the role, that he was going to be doing the score, that he felt like, quote, a nervous Padawan, which I thought was kind of interesting, knowing who he is and how well he's done with his career, but still following the footsteps of someone like John Williams. That's, no small shoes to fill, and can get anybody to be nervous about doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I think he has a right to be nervous. I mean, John Williams is one of the most iconic composers of all time. And is this... now, I don't know. Is this the first one that John Williams hasn't been involved with as far as the score goes?
I don't recall. I think we talked about this briefly in one of the previous episodes. I think he may not have done much with the Rogue. I think it was kind of a similar thing because he did some stuff with this, I think, but the score was finalized and pushed through by John Powell. So, and then he also had a cool conversation with the host, who asked him kind of what it's like to take what is the iconic theme of Star Wars and to kind of weave it with these new melodies that kind of fit with the direction of the movie's going, right? Which we talked about previously.
Yeah, I mean, the music that we've seen in the trailer so far has been spectacular.
It's unique,
and awesome.
It's kind of guitar riffs, kind of sort of thing, which very cool. I'm like, and you still hear a lot of
the old classic, melodies and everything from the original movies, while maintaining this. It helps to bring out the persona and tone of the movie at the same time.
Yeah, and when asked what his favorite theme was, what his favorite,
what his new one was for this movie that he created.
Yes, he said that it was what he called it, quote, love theme for Kira and Han. So that's the first bit of confirmation that we have gotten from anybody involved that I know of about a potential love interest between the two, Han and Kira.
Very interesting. And I think, I kind of assumed, right? I think we all assumed, but you're right. There's no, that I know of, like you said, official confirmation that there is going to be some sort of love interest between the two of them.
Exactly. But he does follow it up with a quote which has us having more questions than answers, right? Which he says, but is it real love? So, obviously we know the answer to that is probably no, because he ends up with Leia.
Obviously.
But, it's just an interesting piece there. So, one of the other favorites of mine was with one of our favorite actresses in just general, who is awesome, and it was Emilia Clarke, who plays Kira.
Yeah, she's, we don't need to tell anybody how awesome she is and how excited we are that she's part of two of my favorite universes. I guess you could say Game of Thrones and now Star Wars, which is super sweet. I'm very excited to see more about her character. And she had her interview was kind of funny, going back to that Game of Thrones. The person interviewing her, first he brought this up. First we have Gwendolyn Christie, who plays Brienne of Tarth, also Captain Phasma. Now we've got Emilia Clarke, Daenerys Targaryen, and Kira now in Solo. And they asked her, is there anybody else from Game of Thrones that we can that's kind of on you about, hey, I need to be part of the Star Wars universe, hook me up. And her first response was, Kit, he needs to be in Star Wars. He's desperate. And I'm like, that would be awesome. I would love to see Kit Harington in a Star Wars movie.
Yes, please.
Yes, please. Yes, he has my vote. Absolutely, 100%.
And I don't know, just judging by the way she said it, she didn't hesitate. Like, she said it immediately. Kit is desperate. Like, it makes me think that Kit actually wants to be in one of the Star Wars movies, which would be awesome.
That would be awesome. There was no pause after asking that question. That was Kit, and that was the only answer she gave. Kit Harington. That would be dope.
Yeah, I think so. You touched on something that she said in the Graham Norton interview, right? She mentioned it in this as well, saying that that her relationship with Han is something that they've known each other for most of their life, right?
Right.
And when asked kind of further when the interviewer kind of delved further into that, she essentially just said something along the lines of that they're getting ready to tell you what you already know, right? Which to me, that's pretty ambiguous, right? That's kind of an ambiguous thing, but
they're really trying not to give anything away.
They're not trying to give anything away, and I just have a feeling that when we watch the movie afterwards, we're going to be like, that's what she was talking about.
Right.
You know? I don't know why.
It's going to be like an aha moment. But they're definitely being very careful about not spoiling anything for us. So another one of my favorite interviews, for a very weird reason, and you pointed this out to me, was John and Lawrence Kasdan, the co-writers of this story. Of course, we know Lawrence Kasdan. He's iconic. He wrote arguably the best Star Wars movie to date, Empire Strikes Back.
One could say the best movie to date.
One could say the best movie to date. I totally agree. The cool thing is now he has teamed up with his son, John Kasdan, to write Solo. And this
is also, I'm pretty sure he's a credited actor, screenwriter in many other things. So
I'm sure nothing that I've ever heard. I mean, I don't know much about him.
I think he actually helped write some of Rogue Squadron.
Rogue One.
Squadron.
Rogue One.
Yeah.
I knew what you meant.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, I didn't know that. But nevertheless, him and his father have wrote this one, and it's been a script that's been in the making. It's not something that they just came up with, recently. It's been something that's been a long time coming. And Lawrence talks about, Star Wars is a saga about generations, right? And he touches on the fact that, he was part of the original Star Wars. Now he gets to be part of this new Star Wars with his son. It was just a very captivating cool moment.
Can you imagine?
And really speaks to what Star Wars is and how people have experienced it through the ages. And this is a very real life example of that.
That's true. So I mean, we have the original trilogy with our parents and probably some of their parents. And how they love that, and then us growing up with kind of the prequel trilogy, and then the prequel trilogy, and then the Clone Wars cartoons, and now these new movies. That's a span of 40 years that spans multiple generations, and that's it's just so awesome. And it's awesome to see this happening in right in front of us in Star Wars.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree more. It's kind of like a cinematic phenomenon. When The Force Awakens came out, there were grandfathers who took their sons and their son took their sons and 3-4 plus generations sitting in one theater together, enjoying a movie that's spanned across 40 plus years.
That's pretty crazy.
It's really cool. Another thing about this interview with the Kasdans was, if you close your eyes while listening to them, there's no difference. They sound exactly alike, and I
zero difference.
Definitely chuckled a little bit when Lawrence opened his mouth and then John opened his mouth. I was like, "Wait, what? What's going on?"
It's kind of funny. Lawrence, I've heard him in the past, and he has a unique voice, kind of higher pitched. And you're right. When I had no idea that, because I was working when I was watching this, and I just thought he just kept talking. And I look over, and I'm like, oh. Shit, that's his son talking. That's not Lawrence talking.
That definitely made me chuckle.
So I think the last one I want to talk about is Donald Glover, actually. So he was, he's playing Lando Calrissian, and in his interview, he brought up the competitive nature between him and Alden Ehrenreich, which I think is really cool. So when asked about that, he said it was competitive in a good way. Right. So, for example, Alden Ehrenreich kind of started doing kickboxing, so Donald Glover started doing kickboxing as well, so they could beat him. They would work out together, and he would try to do one more rep than Alden, right? So it's a little competitive thing, and I really hope and I believe that will translate pretty well into the movie, right?
I was just going to say, I mean, Lando and Han have that competitiveness in the movie anyway, so it's good to see that off screen, it's just kind of building and pushing that relationship between the two characters that we all know and love. I think this is a good segue, something I wanted to talk about. I know that you also did was the fact that there has been very strong mention to the fact that Lando is pansexual.
Yep, he's fluid, baby.
which is very Lando.
It is very Lando.
Like when I heard this, I'm like, oh well, yeah,
that makes sense.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Not even a question in my mind, and it's really gotten very, very mixed reactions.
As does many social issues with the internet. It's ridiculous in my opinion.
There's definitely two very clear sides to this. I mean, in both sides, there's unhappiness coming from both sides of this.
Yeah, I don't know. People are kind of upset that they feel that they ruined the womanizer nature of Lando, and in my opinion, that it really only strengthens his the type of character he is. Right, he is a womanizer, but he's not just a womanizer. He's a manizer. I don't. He just goes with the flow, and he's all about that. And in Last Shot, we find out that he is actually he falls in love with an alien. So it's not just gender. It's
species or a VCR, whatever's there.
He's very close with L3, a droid. I'm not saying I don't know. Who knows how he.
But I mean, that's kind of the definition of pansexual, though.
Yeah.
Right? So maybe the droid's giving him mechanical hand jobs in the back of the Millennium Falcon. We don't know.
So, and then John Kasdan actually wrote back, he wrote a tweet that really kind of, I think, sums up what I would think is the feeling and the sentiment behind, all of Lucasfilm. And that he says that he's not sorry at all that he did this because, quote, "The galaxy George gave birth to in 77 is big enough for everyone. Straight, gay, black, white, brown, Twi'lek, Celestin, Wookiee, droid, and anything in between."
I mean, that's a really great way. It's a great way of putting it. I mean, I couldn't have said it any better.
We'll link to that tweet in the show notes so you can like it and tweet it to your followers.
There's obviously the people who say, "Oh no, Han is or Lando is a ladies' man. He can't be pansexual." But then there's also the other side of it, the LGBTQ community, that's kind of saying, "Okay, well, we've had enough of you talking about it. Let's see it." It's great if they're going to say, "Okay, Lando is pansexual." Okay, sweet. How do we know that? Are you going to show? Yeah, say what I want. Or show him having sex with his droid. Show him, I don't know. I mean, the options are endless. Let's actually see them put that into action.
Like they're kind of pandering to get the brownie points, but while not really actually going the full length to say yes, he actually is pansexual. It's just he is
right
in passing,
right? And I mean, and they might show some stuff in the movie, and I hope that they do. That's the whole point. Like, why say that he's pansexual if you're not actually gonna add it to the plot or follow through with it?
I do have to say that I think Star Wars in general, and I kind of want to delve into this a little further in a further episode, but they're very progressive, right? And I think we see that a lot more so with the newer canon. Not more so, but we're seeing a lot of it in some of the books where they're kind of introducing, gender non-binary characters. They're introducing gay characters that we just haven't seen before, and the more the better. I welcome it. The galaxy is a large place. There's going to be
a huge place.
Many different types of people, many different types of species that are going to have different things.
Different
asexual,
types of
pansexual, whatever sexual.
All kinds of different. I mean, you're right. I mean, it's a huge galaxy, and who are we to say that only females and males are the only people who can enjoy sex? It's just a stupid thought.
It's pretty ridiculous. So going back to the red carpet premiere, that kind of sums up most of what I found interesting out of the cast and crew. They did interview pretty much everyone else, like I said. Ron Howard, the director, the actress that plays L3, Phoebe. They interviewed Alden Ehrenreich, who again said Falcon, which thumbs up. They interviewed Thandie Newton, which I think actually I did briefly mention this earlier. She actually talks about who her character is a little bit, kind of not really giving any spoilers, but saying that that this is the most proficient, skilled, and no nonsense character that she's ever played, right? Which is cool because if you watch Westworld,
she's very proficient, skilled, and
pretty much, yeah,
nonsense.
I like that. I think that's gonna be great. She also calls out that this was the type of role that would have generally have gone to a man, and that she says
Interesting.
that time and time again, and that for a woman to be quote that dope, she's really liking that, and in hopes that it can promote the normalcy of having a female character in that role. And again, let's say more power to him.
Absolutely, that's super exciting to hear. And we don't know that much about Thandie Newton's character from the trailers. We only see her like a few seconds of her, but it sounds like she's gonna be really fun to watch. So the premiere was last week, as we said, and of course there's gonna be all kinds of reviews coming out of that, right? Mostly positive stuff, I think. Little bit. Obviously, people are going to have negative things to say. They always do about any movie. So far, I try not to pay too much attention to these things. I'm still excited about it, but I know that there was some less than ideal reviews that came out of this.
I think so. I think Rotten Tomatoes gave it a 70. I think it's hovering around 72% right now, which is it's a decent score.
It's not horrible.
No.
But it's not great when you compare it to what Rotten Tomatoes has given a lot of the other Star Wars movies.
It is the worst score that a new movie since Disney took over. It is the worst score out of any of the ones that have come out.
And I think it's sitting at like number 3, right ahead of Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones.
Yeah, 3 in terms of what's from the bottom.
From the worst. Yeah, which is not really great to hear. But Rotten Tomatoes has given crappy scores to lots of movies that lots of people have liked.
Yeah, and they've also given good scores to movies that lots of people didn't like.
Hated, right.
Like The Last Jedi. 91%.
90. Oh, yeah. So I don't really give a shit about what Rotten Tomatoes has to say about Star Wars, to be perfectly honest.
True, but I think so they gave kind of a consensus overall view, which kind of sums up most of what I saw in some of these reviews, right? So if you look on Rotten Tomatoes, the consensus was, quote, a flawed yet fun and fast-paced space adventure, Solo should satisfy newcomers to the saga as well as longtime fans who check their expectations at the door. And that's what I do. I'm going to check my expectations at the door.
I mean, it's kind of a good summary of exactly how I'm going into this movie. So, again, no cause for alarm on my part. Anyway, I'm still very much looking forward to it.
One thing that I saw that kind of worried me from the beginning, we've talked about it before, Alden Ehrenreich and how he is as Han Solo. From what I've seen in some of the reviews from things like the Rolling Stone, I think the New York Times kind of hit on it as well. Apparently, Alden Ehrenreich does a decent job,
which is good to hear. Again, that was one of the bigger concerns when this movie was first announced. So great to see that he was able to step it up and fill those shoes.
Yeah, and I think kind of some of the general feelings from a lot of the reviews that I've seen also is that Solo kind of plays it safe. And I don't really exactly know what that means, but, maybe they're not taking as many risks in terms of a challenging story or, some different story arcs, that it's more just a action adventure, cookie cutter sort of thing, but with, a Millennium Falcon and lasers. So I'm going to love it.
Yeah, right. That's all I'm looking for. I mean, I hope that they do take some risks and don't just play it safe across the board. But I mean, either way.
I think they're probably some of the risks that they're taking from what we've seen in the trailers. And, again, we've touched on this before, but is some of the humor, right? We see it a lot in more the newer Star Wars, but still, I'm assuming there's going to be a lot more humor in this one. So I think that's kind of risky because it's
risky, but it doesn't. But as long as they do it in the right way, it doesn't.
Executed well.
Right. Like we don't need another repeat of The Last Jedi.
And I think one of the reviews that I liked the most was a tweet from Kevin Smith, who is also a giant nerd like us.
Big, long-time Star Wars fan. I mean,
yeah,
we all know that.
He said he tweeted out a review of what he thought about the movie, and that it essentially is good fan service to the movie and to the fans, and that people should probably really like it. I'll link to the tweet in the show notes.
It's always awesome to hear from big hardcore Star Wars fans that they were pleasantly that they were pleased with the overall feeling from the movie. So one thing we want to get into definitely is what we expect from this movie, what we're hoping to get out of this movie. But before we do that, I want to talk to you a little bit about the novel that came out last shot. I know you read it. I'm not really much of a reader myself, so I always lean on you for those kinds of things. So want to talk a little bit about that and what your thoughts on the book were.
Yeah, so Last Shot was a novel written by Daniel José Older, I think is his name. And it came out April 17th, so it's been out for just over a month. And it was a pretty good book. So it was kind of something that sandwiches the newer content and some of what we know from the original trilogy as well as before Solo. So I think the timelines are, so it starts with the now time. And the now time is 7 years after Return of the Jedi. Mm-hmm. And Ben Solo is a 2-year-old. Han is living on, I forget the planet, but with Leia, who is a senator in the New Republic, and Han is a retired general who is taking over as a flight captain or instructor. So that's the now time period. 7 years after Return of the Jedi.
And that's how it starts.
Yeah. And then there's another time period, which is, I think it's, quote, about 10 years earlier. So it's between, around 3-4 years before A New Hope. And that's the Han time period that we see. He has the Millennium Falcon, so it's definitely after Solo. Mm-hmm. And then the other time periods are about 15 years before the now period. So it would be about 5 years
prior to Solo
time. So about 5 years probably before Solo, and that follows Lando. And he has the Millennium Falcon. Mm-hmm. And there's one more, it's about 20 years before the now time period, so about 5 years, again, further in the past. And that follows the villain in the story, this guy named Fyzen Gor, who is an Utapau. He's from Utapau, so, like that guy.
Interesting.
From episode 3. He says he's the creepy-ass teeth.
10th level. Thousands of battle droids.
Exactly, that guy. So that is, so that's the timeline, right?
What's the name of the villain again?
Fyzen Gor. Now, here's the thing. I don't read novels anymore. I listen to them in audiobook. So for the longest time, I was Fyzen Gor, Dryden Voss. It's very similar in my head. So for the longest time, I was like, that guy's not from Utapau. Like, it's Paul Bettany. Like, what? I'm so confused. So then I looked it up. But anyway, so what? Kind of a quick rundown of the story. Spoilers for those who don't want to hear about this if you're planning on reading it.
I feel like we need like a spoiler, like ooh, ooh. Yes. Like the Imperial Alert, like a button or something. Like, anyway, spoilers.
We can add that in post.
There you go. Yeah. Now we're thinking. People who knew what they were doing on a podcast would do something like that.
That's the terminology, right? Add that in post.
Sure.
Something like that.
Whatever you say, man.
The overarching storyline is there is it starts with with Lando in Cloud City, and one of his droids kind of gets hacked by this character in a green cloak.
Lobot?
No, actually. Lobot is there, and he doesn't die. Something happens that the droid gets past Lobot and into Lando's thing, and Lando, I think, kills the droid. But the droid is essentially just saying, kill, right? And that's all he's doing.
Okay.
So then it kind of goes next to, the next scene is Han and Leia in their home, living the normal mom and pop life.
So this is like fast forward along.
No. This.
Okay. I'm getting out. Too many timelines. I'm getting confused. Got it.
So, and Lando shows up there and punches Han in the face. Like, immediately as soon as he sees him, punches him right in the face. And it turns out that this character in the green cloak tried to kill Lando because the Millennium Falcon stole something from him about 10 years ago. So Lando shows up knowing that about 10 years ago,
Han has the Millennium Falcon.
Right.
And now, just so I'm keeping my story straight, because all these jumping around town is just confusing the fuck out of me. This is the now time. Ben's a little kid. Ben Solo's a kid. And this is after Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, this is about 2 years or 7 years after Return of the Jedi and 2 years after the Battle of Jakku. Because I believe that Ben was conceived around the time of the Battle of Jakku. Yeah,
so do we know what this item was that was stolen from this mysterious green figure?
Not yet, and that's what this book is about. So they jump around in timelines because they kind of go into who this character in green is. We find out that it is Faison Gore, who was a medical student 20 years ago on Utapau that was kidnapped and essentially stranded because his craft crashed. And he had a droid with him, and he kind of became, I wouldn't say crazy, but he came up with this ideology that sentients were lesser people than droids. So he kind of had this thing of putting droid parts on humans to make them better because not humans, just living creatures,
sentient beings
in general. So he had this whole love obsession with droids eventually.
Any connection there between him and General Grievous?
Not that I know of. I believe this would be after the time of General Grievous. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I guess there's just like a lot of connect because General Grievous went to Utapau. That's one of his bases were. We know that General Grievous was originally a member of the Kaleesh, and before he opted into getting his body mostly, for the most part, replaced entirely with droid parts. So that's interesting that you say that. That was the first thing that came to my mind. I'm like,
that's true.
What does he have to do with General Grievous? There seems like there's too many connections there for it to be a coincidence. But maybe
yeah,
not.
I never thought of that. So to kind of speed this up a little bit, we find out that the thing that the Millennium Falcon stole about 10 years ago was this thing called the Phylanx Redux Transmitter. And it all kind of weaves together because about 15 years ago, L3 is going into this kind of unexplored region in space with Lando, not really telling him what's going on. And in that region of space...
At this time, this is prior to Solo.
This is 15 years ago, yeah. In that timeline, they go... So this is before Han has the Falcon. They go and they battle with this, again, this figure in green that's kind of flying through space on his own in like a jetpack. And they came close to destroying the Phylanx Redux transmitter about 15 years ago. So he flies off because they were about to get destroyed. And then, the timeline of 10 years ago, Han, with his love interest at the time, a character named Sana Staros, who I think is in some of the comics, she's with him, and they together steal the Phylanx Redux transmitter. But Han actually throws it out the side because they got backstabbed by some of their smuggler friends, and it's kind of lost. So for the longest time, they don't know where it's at.
So what is this device? What does it do?
So what this thing does is it's a transmitter, right? And it
you don't say.
So what it does is it transmits a signal to droids in any vicinity, and it's on this it's on this path that's traveling across the galaxy by itself. Which is kind of cool. But what it does is it emits a signal, and it will essentially convert droids to killing machines.
Interesting.
So it kind of follows through into his thing of sentients are lesser beings and that droids are better. And it was his vision to hack essentially all of these droids to take over,
wipe out sentient life.
Exactly. And that is something that it's really interesting because we know Ben Solo is at home. Leia is off doing Senate duty stuff. We have Han off doing, trying to save the galaxy stuff. And Ben is at home by himself, cared for by a top-of-the-line service droid. So when that signal eventually goes out, it tries to kill Ben. Long story short, Lando successfully blows up the Phylanx Redux transmitter. I believe Faison Gore is killed, and they save the galaxy. That's pretty much it. It's pretty. There's a couple things I do want to touch on in this. One being that we know that Han. They touch on how he's not really liking the life of a family man, of how things came on so quickly. It was almost as if it was a unplanned thing that they were like, oh shit, like we have a kid now, we better settle down.
Not really that surprised.
And we also, judged by this book, Leia's off doing her thing, Han's off doing her thing, so Ben is by himself. That's our first taste as to probably the life that Ben lived that really drives him to become who he is in his distaste for his parents, because they were never around. They weren't caring for him. They were off caring for the galaxy.
It kind of brings this whole thing full circle.
And one last thing, very minor. In this, they do actually talk about how the Millennium Falcon was pristine and super fresh when Lando had it. But apparently Han didn't like that at all. That he purposely made it shitty. That he didn't think people should live that way. That it just wasn't his vibe. So when he got it, he just didn't
let it go.
He let it go purposely. So that's how it got to be where it is.
Maybe that's part of the reason that it's now missing its center piece. Presuming it's not some sort of weapon that's shot off, or, I mean, I guess I'm not really sure what, but I guess we'll find out more.
So that's the last shot. It's going to tie in maybe somewhat to the movie. Again, sandwiches the movie a little bit. So
I'm glad we had this conversation because I don't want to be confused during. Not that I will be.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Who knows how much they'll tie into it, but it'd be really cool to have a few Easter eggs in there that have to do with the movie.
Rogue One. They put out Catalyst, which was that tie-in novel,
right,
which followed Jin's dad, Galen Erso. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of backstory around the relationship between Galen and, oh gosh, why can't I think of the bad guy's name in the movie?
In the movie?
In Rogue One.
Krennic.
Yes, Director Krennic. So I imagine it'll be somewhat similar. I don't think we'll see Fyze and Gore or the Phalanx Redux transmitter, but you never know.
Yeah, who knows? Only time will tell. So let's wrap this up with talking about some of the expectations we have going into this movie. We're going to be today's the 25th. We're seeing it here in a few hours.
Mm-hmm. So pumped.
Very excited. What are some of the things that you want answers about? Some of the things that you're hoping to see?
I'm really excited about, again, seeing. It's kind of a question I didn't know was going to be answered, like you said earlier. I'm really excited about seeing the start of the relationship between Han and Chewie and the start of the relationship between Han and Lando. Those are probably the two things that I'm most excited about seeing.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. How those relationships start, how they develop, and hopefully get a sense of the relationship that we know them to have from the original trilogy. That's definitely top of my list for sure. Another one that I'm curious about is we've seen images of Kira. I think it's on some action figures, mm-hmm, with her holding in her hand a pair of gold dice attached to a metal chain, which, mm-hmm, we saw in The Last Jedi. And exactly. I guess
I think we also see it in one of the TV spots. I think he puts.
Do we see him in the
something.
TV spots?
Yeah.
Presumably, it's also, you can see shots of it in the original trilogy.
I don't recall that, but
I don't recall it either. It's something that I read. I don't even know that it's true. Just something that I saw. I've never personally seen them or haven't really looked for them in the original trilogy, but we see these dice. They're definitely more important in The Last Jedi. Kylo picks them up at the very end, and they kind of disappear.
And Luke makes a point to give it to Leia, right? So there's some sentimental value there.
There is. So very interested in seeing what Kira has to do with those dice, what they mean to Han, and what the overall significance to the plot is with that.
Exactly. And lastly, I think what I'm also really excited to see, something that I expect to see probably early on in the film, is Han's background in the Empire and how he we see him in some of the uniform. I don't know if that's because they're dressing up to do that, but I'm pretty sure it is confirmed that he was a part of the Empire. He was a recruit, and I'm excited to see and expect to see some of that probably early on in the movie.
Yeah, for sure. I really want to see, and we're gonna get this. We've already talked about it. We've seen it in some of the TV spots. I want to see some Kira badassness, and I'm very curious to find out more about Dryden Voss as well.
A lot of expectations. Not too high though. You know, I don't want to be leaving with the same feeling I had when I left The Last Jedi. But
Nope, don't want to get our hopes up that much. But setting our expectations at a reasonable level. Having said that, I'm very excited about this movie. I think it's going to be great. And again, I can't say this enough. Very excited to see the beginnings of the relationships that we know so well now from the original trilogy.
Yep.
So that kind of wraps up our final thoughts, preview of Solo, A Star Wars Story. Make sure, after we go see the movie, we are going to be doing our next episode on our reaction to the film. So make sure you follow us on Twitter or on Facebook. Check out our website so you know when that next episode is going to drop. As always, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.